It's already that time of the year where we're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite horror movies of 2025. Has this been the best year in recent memory? I believe not, but there was some subtle bangers. 8 of the 10 I did see in theaters, and we're going to break it up, not just from best to worst, but from worst to mid to the best. Because, not all of them suck, but I'm happy to report that the majority of this list is a banger. Let's fucking do it. Welcome to the Drip Fed Dread. I'm your host. The critic that actually doesn't want to talk shit all the time, but only disses things when they're a little bit bad. Dill, we're on the journey of 5,000 subscribers. Let's just get into it. Coming in at number 10. This one was the worst movie I saw all year by far, and it was just boring. It was the adaptation of Joe Hill's short Dracula meta story, Abraham's Boys. This one just didn't have a lot to offer. Again, the ones I'm going to talk bad about, I'm not going to belligerently roast it because I have no fun making videos when I have to talk shit. This one focuses on two brothers in the middle of this desolate area whose mother is a vampire and she gets very sick and she's dying. And though it was filmed beautiful enough, it was very much an indie film. I mean, me and my friend saw it in a theater of just me and her. It was very ambiguous with the story. The acting was very subpar, and they kind of left out too much information. It was abundantly clear that it was a riff on vampires that had a lot to do with Van Helsing and his family's lineage, and the lore just didn't quite make sense, and it took forever to get to where you wanted it to go. There wasn't a lot of brutal kills. It was just a very meta and disinteresting version of a vampire movie that, again, ended very ambiguous and just didn't have a lot to say. Coming in at number 9, and I'm talking shit about this one, and I didn't even play the video game until Dawn. I heard great things about this game, the lore of the story, how, the game is critically acclaimed. I know it's kind of later into the franchise, so they couldn't get many of the original actors from the game to be in the movie, which that's fine, I guess. But from what I'm understanding, even just as a standalone horror movie where I knew nothing about the game, it was just thrown together very wildly. It didn't seem to make much sense. There were some cool practical effects, some cool designs, some cool monsters and blood and a lot of carnage, but it just seemed like they didn't even know what story they were telling. It just seemed like a thrown together slasher with a lot of jump scares, and obviously it was surface level. It was for the mainstream audience, which I'm never a huge sucker for that. I'm not trying to be a snob where I'm like, movie needs storytelling, interesting characters, but when you watch a movie, you want something sustainable, and this one just kind of dragged along. And the reason it's not last is because it was bloody and there was some cool kills, but all around it just fell flat and just told a very unfinished story. We're going to get into the mid section now, the movies that were hella mid that honestly didn't offend me the most, but they just were what they were. Number 8 is Clown in a Cornfield from Adam Cesar's coming-of-age novel about a small desolate town in the middle of Nebraska that has a mascot named Friendo the Clown that goes around killing people. Again, this was a surface level, fun, fascinating little slasher movie that kind of took its liberties and followed a lot of the same formulas, but had an interesting twist along the end. I was really intrigued with what they did with who the maybe killers were. It had a lot of that thing that I make fun of a lot in movies, like when survivors have to say something to a killer. Like if you're watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and they're like, "Talk about a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, bitch," and then just kill the killer. Just little corny lines like that. I did like the fact that these kids created YouTube videos about the lore and mystery about Friendo the Clown and how one of the characters' family lineage stemmed back to this mascot of the town, and how it was kind of this creepy scarecrow-like clown, and they kind of made videos horror, little horror skits set up to look real, but they're fake, when all of a sudden one day they zoom in and they see the real clown in the background. I feel like that was creepy. There was some interesting kills. It kind of followed the direction of Scream with the meta-ness and talking about the town and the history. The one main girl, her father, and her dynamic is interesting, and there's a lot of lovable characters that you root for all around. It was just one of those slashers that if you've seen one, you've seen them all. And even though it did take its liberties and have a little bit more in-depth storytelling that I liked, with some of the characters being less cliche, it was still very formulated and structured. A clown with a cornfield aesthetic is very haunting. Some of the kills were brutal. The design of the clown was pretty creepy, and it was a fun ride. It just kind of bored you with a lot of exposition at the end that tried to force a story together. Coming in at number 7, the follow-up to the fantastic 2022 Talk to Me, Bring Her Back, which I thought this movie started great. It was an exposition on grief and trauma, like a lot of horror movies are. This one fell flat for me because even during the time watching it, I really liked this movie and I thought it had a lot to offer, but it just didn't fill the pit of your stomach with dread as much as it should. It had a lot of unanswered questions. There were some ritualistic, weird cult-like inspirations to it. Some of the characters that had these hideous agendas, they didn't really quite follow through with it. It just felt like an unfinished story, a movie I would really love to rewatch. But what held it together are the two main kids' performances, how their dad dies in a tragic way and they have to go stay with this one lady and you're really rooting for them, and this one lady is off the wall, unhinged, very disturbing, very creepy. There's some beautiful imagery, and there are some pretty graphic scenes in there that makes you squint, but not as intense as Talk to Me. Again, the Filippo brothers did a follow-up to Talk to Me, and again, I'm not trying to like be selfish or greedy with horror, but that movie was just so 10 out of 10, and this one just didn't seem as refined. It seemed like they rushed to get a next feature out. It could have been right up there with Talk to Me if they just handled it a little bit better. The little creepy boy's performance is phenomenal, along with the the evil foster aunt or whatever the hell she is. The acting's there, the cinematography is great, the music and pacing is there. It just felt a little not full, it was a little hollow. Comment down below if you're agreeing with any of this list so far, or if you just think I'm a fucking dud for saying any of this. What movies did you guys see in theaters this year? I would love to know. But now the final 6 are the best. Like I said, there was some bangers this year, and I want to talk about the good ones because I don't like being negative. Coming in at number 6, I'm pretty sure this is probably on anyone's radar, anyone's top list. Has to be Zach Cregger's Weapons. I was a huge simp for Barbarian. You guys should fucking know if you watch this channel. You're like, dude, all he does is talk about Barbarian. That movie was fucking awesome. Weapons was more fine-tuned. It had a lot more structure to it. I liked how they kind of told this movie in chapters. They had all these supporting characters follow it one line from start to finish until the final climax, and it kind of did that cool thing where you'll see someone's perspective and then later on in the movie you see another one's during that same time, and that was cool. But they spent a lot of time kind of showing flashbacks and inserts that kind of dumbing it down to the audience. Like I feel like after the second excerpt, the second little journal entry that you realize they were following from that same night, they kind of force it down your throat a little bit. Josh Brolin's performance is awesome. The girl from Ozark did good. It had a creepy, unique story that literally left you guessing the whole time. When you're watching it, you're like, I'm a very in-tune movie watcher, and there are times where I was like, I don't know which direction they're taking this. It was very humorous when it needed to be. There's some lovable characters that you really relate to, like the tweaker crackhead dude. You're like, I knew this guy so many times. Like Zach Cregger nailed that character arc of casting that dude. It had an interesting story about a young boy who, but something happens to his parents that really sends him into a spiral, and then his evil aunt comes to town. And this is one of those movies that I don't want to spoil too much of. You just got to watch it and figure it out for yourself because it's very different. It took a lot of noble leaps. We know how iconic this character, Aunt Gladys, has become, and I feel like the reason it's not the best one to me is even though it was a unique, deep story with a lot of interesting aspects, for me it felt like it was all over the place. It felt like a film that was kind of like a bunch of movies wrapped up into one so he could make a movie, and I just didn't see the vision overall, but it was still a solid, phenomenal watch. Coming in at number 5, don't roast me for this, is Pete Davidson's The Home. I thought this movie was fucking awesome. Say what you want about Pete Davidson. He gets every bitch in town, dude. He's a heartthrob. He's a real lady killer. But he actually did surprisingly good in this movie, and I feel like his like nonchalant, chill demeanor really catered to this movie because as the horror and creepy shit starts to unfold, his acting gets better because it starts off he's this young delinquent kid who can't get over the grief and death of his brother, and his family are like, you got to go work at this retirement home as like probation or else you're going to jail. And he goes, and like he's just so nonchalant and chill, and to see some horrific, weird, shady stuff unfold to a character that it's not comedic and he's not funny, but just so like I don't fucking care, it's real. It brings a realism to it, and it tells and unfolds this story at this retirement home when he gets close to this one resident who ends up dying tragically. It unfolds this really cool graphic story, and as it progresses and the weird stuff starts to happen, it takes your belief and kind of turns it on its head. And it's one of those movies where it gets a little bit supernatural and chaotic and crazy, but you really allow that to happen. And there's one brutal fucking kill scene that, let's just say, Pete Davidson goes through that place, and I was literally like, hell yeah, that's what I'm all about. It had a great story. You could feel the love, care that he had for this redemption story he's going on. He's trying to figure out answers about his brother. He's trying to figure out what's going on with this home, and all around it's a pretty decent movie. Alright, we are in the top 4. This was the hardest list for me to go from 4 to 1 because I love them all equally, but let's do it. Before we get on, you guys comment down below what videos you want to see. I've been trying to cater to the masses. I just put a poll up on which movie y'all wanted to see, and y'all voted for the Silent Hill films. I'm going to be reviewing both of them. Number 4. I saw this movie in theaters twice, and I thought it was fantastic. Sinners. That's right, Michael B. Jordan's vampire flick. Little fun fact, I was actually reading an article the other day that y'all know me, I'm one of those weirdos that I love MGK. I turn up to his rock music. I know Eminem beat him in that rap diss, but I love his punk music, and he actually turned down the role to be like the little henchman to the main vampire. But that was cool. I feel like the guy that ended up playing that character was awesome. But anyway, these two brothers move back to their hometown. It's like Prohibition era Louisiana, wherever in the South, and they are trying to illegally they're trying to start their own kind of speakeasy pub where they're going to sell alcohol and just have a vibe. And this movie really paces itself. It tells a lot of history and story about that era of, you know, the tail end of slavery and all of this social impact from African American people. And then it turns into like a From Dusk Till Dawn vampire story with a musical in it. And there's a lot of singing and a lot of like crazy parts, but the one thing I like about this is how they really peg the vampires to not be the bad guys. You have these white, malicious, hateful, racist people being the villains. You have these oppressed black people trying to start their own movement, and then these vampires being like, if you just become vampires, you'll never feel pain and hate again. Jack O'Donnell, I believe his name is, does a fantastic job. Michael B. Jordan playing the twin brothers, phenomenal. There was some campy parts in there where they're explaining vampire lore to you, and it, like, again, it seemed very From Dusk Till Dawn with the bar and the vampires, but it was a very heartwarming movie. The soundtrack is banging. The kid that plays like the cousin who kind of like survives it all, he has a beautiful singing voice. He has such a unique sound to him, and all around I just loved the music incorporated. I loved how the vampires weren't necessarily evil, but they were at the same time. Like, there's one part I conflicted with where this one character desperately needs to save another one, and let's just say it might not happen, and you're like, why don't you just both become vampires and live forever? Like, that would be fucking awesome. But it's just a solid movie. It was filmed beautifully, and for a vampire movie, it was very unique. Coming in at number 3, you know me, I'm a Halloween nut. I just turned up in October. I love spooky stuff above all, and that was VHS Halloween. I thought this movie was disturbing. I don't usually fuck with found footage films, so for this one to really sneak into my top 3 is awesome. I heard a lot of people not like it as much as previous ones, so that makes me want to check out other ones. Comment down below. Let's get this video to 20 likes if you want me to do a VHS ranking video. That'd be kind of fire. But this one is awesome. There's like the anthology of the 5 stories throughout, and it just embodied Halloween. That was my biggest thing, is if you're gonna do a theme thing like when they did 1994, or, you know, an anthology based on like Christmas or whatever, this and that, like, you gotta convince me it's Halloween, and this one was perfect to watch in the middle of October. There were some spooky stories, a lot of carnage involving kids, a lot of disturbing aspects, and a lot of really well edited, creepy, gory effects and prosthetics for a found footage. I feel like some of it was a little clunky and didn't make sense with how they filmed a found footage story and how you got that, but all around it was really good. I have a full in-depth review on it. Actually, I have a full in-depth review on all of these movies I'm talking about, so if you want more of my words, just go check out those videos. Coming in at number 2, and I feel like a lot of people love this movie. Oftentimes when movies do a reboot or a fucking long-awaited sequel, they don't hit the mark. I know a lot of people shit talk the Halloween ones. You know, Saw 10 was highly regarded, but I think, honestly, Final Destination Bloodlines was fucking fantastic. This was one I saw in theaters, and it genuinely from start to finish was a blast. The characters they make so lovable. It was unique that it kind of was a reboot in a sense where they're talking about lineage and how death follows family members of survivors that survived. You know, instead of it being like, oh, I survived this tragic accident and they come after you, it's like, what happens if you hide away? They come after your family. And I feel like the acting was great. They really made you feel for this family as they slowly started to get picked apart. It was humorous, but not in like a meme way. Like there were some characters that you genuinely rooted for, like Eric. That character was fucking awesome, and like the second I saw that character, I was like, dude, this dude's awesome. And then the next day on Facebook, everyone was hyping it up. This actor just had charm and pizzazz that you really messed with. And the trailers too, they kind of bait and switch you where you're watching the trailer and they reveal so much and you're like, damn, that's crazy. Just for the movie to flip on its head and show totally something different. There's a scene in there between 2 family members where they both meet their demise, and you're just gut-wrenched by it because you really feel for them. And even though it's brutal and awesome and you get a laugh out of it, like, the way these characters love each other and feel for each other is very impactful, and I feel like taking a franchise that pre-exists and making a part 6 many years later after part 5 and tying it all together in an interesting way was very awesome. But coming in at number 1, I hope this doesn't bother people, has to be the Stephen King fucking Richard Bachman adaptation of The Long Walk. Cooper Hoffman and company just do phenomenal, even though it is a slow-paced movie where they're just walking, you know. It's set in an ambiguous time in American history where a thing called the Long Walk unfolds, and these kids can volunteer, and they just walk, and the last man standing gets money, and if you stop walking, you get brutally executed. It's a government thing, and especially around the time this movie came out, it's so relatable to nowadays. I'm trying not to be political and talk about side shit, but how eerily impactful that movie was today, because a lot of times these dystopian movies are like, this is how freaky the future could be, or this is how America could turn out, but you see a lot of things in this movie that you're like, dude, that's just happening today. And the biggest thing with this movie is like the character work and the acting. Even though it's a movie of just dudes walking, you feel brotherhood connected, you feel camaraderie, you feel pain. I teared up several times watching this movie in theaters. It was filmed immaculately. The dude that directed it, that brought us like Constantine and other hit movies, really felt a passion for the story. And again, it took its liberties from the book and switched it on its head, which left you with like a gut-wrenching feeling at the end where all hope is lost. But the thing I like about this movie is I'm a movie nut that really deep dives and thinks about movies. Everything in this movie, they left no stone unturned. Every character's words made sense. These two characters on the opposite end trying to prove to each other that they're loyal, and all around it was heartbreaking, heroin, some graphic kills, and just a fucking bold movie to release, and an adaptation from a novel that came out in the 70s or 80s that just, this is going to be on constant shuffle in my home for quite some time. I love this movie. But alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if y'all fucked with this list. I know there was many more movies that came out in 2025. The Black Phone. I can't think of other ones, but there's a lot of horror movies. These are just the ones that I saw. Like, I don't watch every movie. You guys know this is a nostalgia channel. This is a nostalgia channel. I talk about like Wrong Turn 2 and fucking 13 Ghosts. But I just, horror movies are relevant, and this wasn't the best year for horror, but there was some bangers, and all around it was a fun year. I can't wait to keep talking about horror movies with you. Again, the Silent Hill review is coming. I hope y'all fuck with that. We're going to get back to the nostalgia stuff, but I'm going to keep doing some more new releases too, just to, because I don't want to just dwell on the past. I want to talk about new and exciting things too. But thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, give me a thumb up, hit that ding-a-ling button, or you telling you, hey, it's me, I'm here, and I'm going to say one time for the one time and 2 times for the O's. Give me a hell yeah for horror. On deity. Let's just say that this movie, even though it gets a lot of flack, it's one of those films that you either hate it or love it. Genuinely took insects, creepy crawlers, and terrified a generation. I can't be the